Those of you who are planning to purchase a house in 2024, 2025, or any year going after 2024, you are likely to face an additional challenge to your home purchasing options that was not there before, at least not until this month. And on November 1st, 2023, there was a thunderstorm or thunderbolt that struck the real estate community. The lawsuit that was filed against large companies such as Keller Williams, Coldwell Bankers, and a few others basically challenged the real estate agent's ability to provide you their services at no cost to you. Up until this ruling of this lawsuit, the real estate agents would charge the sellers to pay the commission that your buyer would earn in case you purchased a house for them. That lawsuit struck the ability of the buyer agents to claim their commission from the sellers, home sellers. So up until this moment, your representation, the services that you received from various real estate agents were not your problem, or the cost of those services were not your problem. Somebody else paid those real estate agents' salary or their commission. Starting from 2024, that is likely to change. So the likely effect, and I have a video that overviews the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit against large real estate brokerages and what kind of legal challenges it still needs to go through before it is finalized. But let's assume for a second that the appellate courts in the Supreme Court supported the original findings of the lawsuit. In that case, this is what you can expect as far as the changes that will affect your ability to purchase homes in next year. Number one, it is more likely to be, it's likely that it will become more difficult for you to purchase a house, because before, when you were purchasing a house, you needed to save money for a down payment, or have money, or find money for a down payment. You needed to find money for closing costs. You needed to find money for inspections, surveys, and appraisals. And then, of course, you had high interest rates that were affecting and increasing your monthly payment. So in 2023, home buyers faced several challenges that were keeping them from potentially finding and being able to afford a house of the size and in location that they wanted to. Now, on top of the closing costs and down payments that you guys needed to pay before, it is very likely that you may need to be able to find money to pay your real estate agent on your own. How much is going to be the payment? Anybody's guess at this point. Nobody knows. The lawsuit was, the verdict in the lawsuit was announced yesterday. So obviously, without seeing how the appellate courts play out, Supreme Court play out, we don't know anything yet, but chances are some changes will take place, and changes are some amount of expense will transfer to you for the payment of the buyer agents. 2, in case you cannot afford or do not want to hire a buyer agent, you could do that. Then you need to understand that before, when you were shopping for a home and you had a buyer agent, whether it's your friend or somebody who was recommended to you, or you found them on Zillow, or however you connected with that person was there to represent your legal interests and to make sure that through the entire duration of your contract, which is usually about 30 days, it takes 30 days or so to finalize the documents on the purchase of a home. During the 30 days, a huge number of legal protections that you guys received during the process of home purchase was carefully followed by all parties. And if for some reason your agent felt like your interests were not properly respected, that agent could challenge the seller and the seller agent and ask them to follow those legal protections for you. Now, if you do not have an agent because you either cannot afford one or do not want to pay for one, then unfortunately, the legal protections that you have and continue to have, according to the standard Texas purchase contract, you may not be able to utilize them fully simply because it's the contract to purchase a house is usually like 9 pages of the main contract plus about 3 to sometimes 4 different addendums that are needed to complete the contract, accounting for a total of about 12 to 14 pages of legalese. Unless you have good enough understanding of contract negotiation, and contract dispute, you may have the protections but not be aware of the protection that you have, and also not be aware that those protections are currently being threatened by the behavior of the seller. So the legal protection that you had before for free being paid by the seller may now go away, and unless you choose to purchase it separately yourself, you may not now have a legal protection. 2, shopping routines. So before, if you wanted to see a house, you could just pick up a phone or text the agent whom you know, maybe your friend, maybe somebody who was appointed to you by Zillow, and you would say, I would like to see a house in 123 Main Street. And they would say, what time is convenient? We will meet you there. They will open the house. They will explain to you what you're seeing. It is crack in the wall, it is a foundation shift, it is the defect in a taping. Should you worry or not worry about rough looking appliances, etc., etc. All of those services that were provided to you for free, now, if you don't have a buyer agent whom you hired, how are you going to be able to access the house, to view the house? Once you're inside of the house, how you can ask somebody about the question that you have about different defects that you're observing. How can you negotiate those defects into a contract? Right now, it is not clear what kind of guidance you would be able to receive from anybody. Also, from a standpoint of writing a contract, how would you, let's just say that you viewed the house and the house looks good, that you don't have any questions, you don't have any concerns, you just write the contract and try to purchase this house. How would you write a contract? So typically in the real estate, you have a main contract, and then depending on the age of the house, location of the house, your loan type, etc., there's typically multiple addendums. They're called addendums. An addendum means in addition to the main contract that also need to be filed with the contract in order to complete the contract and to have a whole contract package. Right now, it is not clear who could help you to write this contract with all the necessary addendums correctly filled out, which leads me to my next point of lawyer's involvement in a contract. So maybe you decided that you don't want to pay for a real estate agent, but in order to write the contract successfully, you could potentially have to hire a lawyer to draft up or fill out the contract for you properly. Now, here is the problem. In the past, if you, let's just say that you went and you saw 5 houses and you want to draft up a contract on a specific house and you don't have a buyer agent, you go to a lawyer and the lawyer says, I'll charge you $200 to draft up a contract. Perfectly, doesn't seem like a lot of money. You draft up a contract, you pay $200 to a lawyer, you submit the contract to the seller and he said, I'm so sorry, but you're not the best contract out there. We chose another buyer. So you go back to shopping, you find another house, you want to take this house under contract, you ask the lawyer to draft up a contract for you, he writes up a contract, and guess what? You pay him another $200, so however how many $100 for writing the contract, and again, you're not selected as the highest bidder. So you see, in the past, I have had personally, as the person who represented buyers, my buyers could write maybe 3 contracts per weekend. They would say, let's send 3 contracts, like we like house number 1 most, and house number 2 second, and the house number 3 third. But let's send contracts to all of them to see which one we win, because you're not guaranteed that your contract is the best contract. So we would write 3 contracts. I would do it for them, of course, because I'm their agent. And if none of those contracts were accepted, my services would be completely for free for them. I would not receive compensation from nobody. I just basically spend 6 hours of my day without being reimbursed for that amount of time. I doubt that any lawyer is going to do the same. So if you want to make offers on 3 different properties, you're likely to spend maybe up to $7 per weekend just writing contract that may or may not be accepted. So lawyers' involvement in a contract could increase your costs even if you don't have an agent. Changes in viewing routines. I think that I already mentioned that. So shopping routines means, how do you start shopping? Typically, very often people come to me and say, hey, we've been renting for a while and we want to buy our first home. Can you tell me how do I start? Can you tell me what's involved? Can you tell me what's my next step is? Can you tell me what documents I will need? Can you recommend a lender? Once I see the house that I want, what are my next steps? Do I need to pay the entire down payment on day one, or do I pay it at closing? All of this education was basically done over a cup of coffee at Starbucks with me, them having their kids on their laps. I would show them the process, explain next steps. We spend an hour drinking coffee, and then they knew what to do. They knew their next steps. Now, if the buyer agent is not involved, unless they have somebody else who's guiding them properly through those steps, many of them will not even know where to start. Even worse, let's just say that they don't know whether or not let's just say that they just decide to buy a house and they start to shop for homes. They don't understand what kind of pre-qualification. They don't understand the difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval. So all of those things are kind of foggy in your brain, and you just start viewing any home that looks good to you. And then you find a home that look good to you. And then you go to your lender, or you say, I want to write a contract for you. You pay for the contract to be written. And then you're denied because you're not qualified for that house. Because before, the realtor would guide you and prevent you from wasting your time on home that you cannot possibly buy. Also, even if you qualify to buy this home, certain types of loans, the realtors know that if you are a first-time buyer loan, you cannot view certain homes because certain homes, just the first buyer loan program will not allow them to be bought. Without knowing all of the little details of the qualification of homes for different loan programs, you might be just randomly seeing home after home after home without knowing whether your loan actually covers those homes. So change in viewing routine. So let's just say very hypothetically that you want to request a showing on a house. Who would you request it for? So before, if you wanted to see 5 or 6 or 10 different homes over the course of a weekend, you would tell your agents, here's a link to home number 1, here's a link to home number 2, and we want to start at 1 and we want to finish at 5. Your agent would then take that information, go into a special showing system, like a special app that manages showings, and try to arrange, because in many cases, the sellers do not want to show the house from 2 to 3. The sellers do not want to show the house after 4, etc., etc. So your agent would spend some considerable amount of time putting together an itinerary, almost like a travel agent, that would bypass all of those weird no showing time issues to create a showing routine that you could easily go from one house to the next, to next, to next. And the only person who needed to know how it all came together was your agent. Now, imagine that your agent is no longer in the picture. Now you have 10 homes that you want to see, 10 different sellers with 10 different requirements, time requirements of when they can allow you to see the home, and 10 different ways that you can access the homes. This will become a logistical nightmare to remember what times you are allowed to visit this home, who is going to let you in, how long you can stay, what are requirements from the seller as far as dogs being in the house, cats being in the house, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that you will just have to be manually now managing because nobody is there to manage them for you. And even when you got into the house, locking the house up, what happens if something breaks? Let's just say that you were walking through the house, you brought your little kiddos with you, and your 5 years old tips and breaks a very expensive vase or piece of art that the seller owned, who is now responsible for the cost of replacement or reimbursement seller for those costs? It's not quite clear. Disruption in major websites. So as of right now, many websites such as Zillow, let's just take Zillow as an example, although there are other websites. Zillow is able to maintain its website and maintain all of that information that you can see on Zillow because Zillow's revenue comes from the money they collect from real estate agents who want to represent buyers. So a huge amount of Zillow revenue is generated, not like you don't pay to use Zillow, correct? Zillow is for free for you right now. But imagine, instead of collecting money from you, Zillow is collecting money from real estate agents who would like to represent you in a sale and show your homes and get paid when the sale closes. But now imagine that Zillow is no longer able to collect the money that it needed to collect from the buyer agents. How will Zillow continue to operate? It is very possible that services like Zillow, Redfin, and many others will, instead of being free because the real estate agents support them, may now become paid services. So on top of everything, you might also face an increase of cost to be able to shop on those websites. There is many other legal implications to the home purchasing process. For right now, I'm just going to stop on those 6 because I think that's quite enough. Now, the only upside in this entire situation is that it is possible, but not guaranteed, that as a result of a change in how the sellers pay, whom the sellers pay, and how much they pay out from their sale, there might be a small decrease in home prices. Because the sellers, in the past, when the seller, let's just say, collected $257 from a sale of their home, they would first pay off their loan. So let's just say in the past, let's just say the seller was selling a home that was $257. The seller owned $157 from that amount. So before the seller could collect their own payment, the title company would pay off their underlying loan, which was $157. So now there's only $107 left, correct? For them. And now the first thing that the title company do before dispersing money to the seller would be to withhold money for the taxes, withhold money for your escrow account, and pay all the associated expenses, including the realtor fees. So in the past, most sellers were paying 6% in realtor fees, with 3% going to the buyer agent and 3% going to the seller agent. So now, even though all of the other expenses still stay, the taxes and the underlying mortgage and the closing costs, they may now have to pay 3% less in fees than they had otherwise. So it is some potential for the home prices to decrease by an appropriate amount. Maybe if they're paying 3% less in fees, maybe the prices would drop by 1 to 2 to 3%. But even though that might offset the actual price of the home on a website, you may face an increase of costs that would be offset by those savings. But let's just pray that there is no increase of cost significant, but there's still some reduction in sales prices. So here is my recommendation to all of you. This is about to become very messy because as of right now, the judgment, the jury verdict on the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit was issued on November 1st, 2023, and today is November 2nd. So it just happened like literally 24 hours ago. So there is still a lot of legal uncertainty about how the parties will continue to cooperate and continue to provide services to buyers and sellers. I do have a good kind of like idea that before it all becomes pretty again, it will probably become very messy for a while, with sellers refusing to pay for this, and there is no lawyers ready to write contracts, and just in general, just like you have a disruption. Imagine that something struck our banking industry, and now the processes that worked before didn't work before are not working now. So this is kind of a similar type of event. So you need to understand that before things to get better, they're likely to get a little bit worse. And them getting a little bit worse might take a few months, maybe 3 to 4 months, may take a year, may take 2 years, who knows? while they're getting worse and before the new rules, new laws are written, you might be on the receiving end, to be honest, of these changes, and the cost of representation, legal uncertainty might increase. My recommendation to you, for the next few months, we are going to see, now that the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit the jury ruled in favor of the claimant, in favor of the sellers. Now that this lawsuit was completed successfully, I can almost guarantee you that 2 weeks from now, we're going to have 16, 20, 30 new lawsuits pending against different real estate companies nationwide, affecting different states. So it is very possible for the next few months, those lawsuits will be playing out and upsetting majorly the whole picture of brokerages, who is still in business, who is not in business after these lawsuits. So until those lawsuits play out, appellate courts play out, potential challenge in the Supreme Court plays out, there's still going to be a few months where everybody knows that disruption had occurred, but nobody really knows how to handle it. My recommendation to you is, if you plan to buy a house in the next 3 to 5 to 10 months or later, I would say try to buy it now before the disruption affected too many brokerages and before the disruption affected too many sellers. Because right now, it just happened yesterday, many home sellers are not even aware of the new rights that they gained as a result of this lawsuit. But give it a month and they will become aware, I'm pretty sure. So my recommendation to all the home buyers who are planning to buy and who do not have tons of cash sitting in their bank account, or on a thin margin and may even need down payment assistance, may even need seller assistance to close, you will be in a worse position, most likely, in 2024. The longer it goes, the more in 2024, let's just say the first few months in 2024, I expect them to be semi-normal, and then potentially hell will break loose. And then it may break loose right in time for the summer to start, just timeline-wise. My recommendation to you, even if you are stuck in a rent right now and you still have 10 months of rent left or whatever, consider the pros and cons of buying your home before those disruptions occur, or waiting to see what happens. But in case those disruptions do start to occur, your waiting may potentially be another year or two before things are settled enough that it is safe again to be purchasing a house and not being worried about not having legal representation, having legal vulnerability in the process. So this is all I had to say for right now. I am going to be tracking different lawsuits affecting the outcomes of all these trials. So in the coming months, I will likely be posting updates, explaining to the buyers and to the sellers what they can expect in the upcoming months. If you think that this topic is interesting to you, consider subscribing to this channel so you don't lose or don't miss those updates, or just emailing me, responding to this email, and letting me know that you would like to receive an update, and then I'll just create a separate mailing group of people who said that they would like to receive an update, and then I will just send additional updates on these topics to that group specifically. So let me know if you need any additional information, guidance, questions, concerns, etc. Put your questions in the comments below so other people can see your question and my answer, and you might help other people who might have the same question. Anyhow, my name is Elena Garrett, and I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Central 75 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. I'm always here for you on this channel. Talk to you soon.